Anything else you want to point out regarding your research? And secondly, as you're also working with hedge fund databases for your surveys, can you tell us more about survivorship bias and how you deal with that?
When you look at the hedge fund table in the survey and you see the 20 different columns of information, the first column is how are funds that appeared in the Wall Street Journal. And I included that metric because I thought it was another way of measuring consistent performance. And what I found out is that 35 of the 50 funds that made this year's survey had also made the Wall Street Journal survey I had done the previous year. And I found that very compelling because it reflected managers who not only did well during 2018 and having made the 2019 Wall Street Journal survey, but they were also able to perform very well in 2019 in the fact that they made the 2020 survey. And so that's just one more metric that my survey introduced to the process of looking at the hedge fund industry that may have also contributed to superior performance, especially during this year of COVID. Another factor that's interesting is survivor bias that I think most people are familiar with. I rely initially on what databases are giving me. And one complaint about databases is that they only include funds that still report. So that means that if you have a slew of funds that have struggled, that have closed, they're not going to be captured in the database numbers. What does that mean? That means total averages that are going to be reported will be higher than if the funds that failed and that no longer reported were also included. I can't argue with that. That's a pretty straightforward observation. However, I looked at the positive side of what survivor bias means. And what looking at the data that hedge funds databases provided me allowed me to find managers who have actually been around for a long time. Now, the average lifespan of a hedge fund is 5 years. It turns out that the average lifespan of the 50 funds was almost 12 years. Again, another way to help ensure that the funds that made my list were consistent performers because they not only delivered sound 5-year trailing numbers, they also showed that they were able to do it across the entire lifespan of the fund. And that's also a very compelling metric in which to gauge whether these hedge funds are worth your time or not.
You mentioned that the average lifespan of your 50 consistent performers is about 12 years, which is, of course, very impressive. But Eric, that also raises the question, what is your view on emerging managers?
I'd like to address one aspect of these long-tenured funds. This is not to dismiss the value of an emerging manager. Certainly there is interest in getting an early place at the table of managers that are starting up funds, especially when they've had established pedigrees at other asset management companies. But still, they are now running the funds on their own. And that means not only are they responsible for performance and investment, they're also responsible for operational efficiencies and running the business of a hedge fund. And that's not an automatic. So I would still rather see 5 years of a manager running both the investment portfolio and the fund's operations before I would feel comfortable allocating money in, because many managers might know how to invest properly, but if the operational side of the business is not first rate, that can suffer. And it also can make it more difficult for investors to get information, to learn about what's happening, and also to make decisions about whether they want to stay in the fund because they are not necessarily getting all the information that they need. So I would like to see a manager have a long track record of at least 5 years of running a shop before I would think it's wise to invest in them.